The first thing I remember is the sound fork stopping midair as my sister pulled her boyfriend toward me, her smile already mocking before she spoke. Christmas lights flickered across her face when she said it. This is the failure of our family. My parents laughed like it was tradition, like humiliating me was part of the holiday menu. I didn't move. I didn't speak. But he did. He looked at them, then at me, and his voice cut through the room. Interesting. Because she's not the one who's done. And that was the moment everything quietly shifted. My name is Serenity Hale, and for as long as I can remember, I've lived at the edge of every room in my own home. Even as a kid, I learned how to move quietly, how to carry plates without clattering them, how to stand where the light didn't reach, how to leave space for the people my family actually noticed. Most nights, dinner felt like a stage play where everyone else had lines. Lila always sat in the center under the bright chandelier her plate filled first. Mine was whatever was left when the serving dishes came back around: cold vegetables, a broken corner of bread, the smallest piece of chicken. I didn't complain. Complaining only led to Diana's voice, soft but sharp. "Don't be greedy, Serenity." She said it so often it became a kind of rhythm in the house. Richard barely looked in my direction unless something needed fixing. A broken faucet, a late bill, a chore. Lila didn't feel like doing. I was good for tasks, not attention. He called it building character, though somehow Lila never needed the same lessons. She got new clothes, new clubs, new opportunities. I got lectures about being realistic and grateful. I remember one winter afternoon, Leela forgot her project for school, some elaborate poster Diana helped her with. When the teacher called about it, Richard didn't ask Lila why she left it behind. He turned to me instead, irritation ready in his voice. "Why didn't you remind your sister?" As if my role wasn't to live my own life, but to keep hers from falling apart. Lila didn't even look guilty. She never did. In our house, guilt was something assigned, not earned. The older we grew, the more invisible I felt. My achievements, small hard one, vanished in the shadow of her performances. I remember earning a place in an art program downtown. I came home with the acceptance letter, heart racing, thinking maybe this time they'd see me. Diana read it in silence before placing it neatly on the counter. "Lila has danced that day," she said, "and we can't be driving all over town." When I didn't respond, she added, "Your mother would want you to be practical." The acceptance letter went into the trash that night. Lila's dance costumes arrived 2 days later. Money disappeared the same way my chances did, quietly. Payments meant for my classes, my savings, my future. Redirected into Lila's needs: new shoes, competition fees, weekend trips. I learned not to ask where my portion went. Asking only made Richard sigh like he was tired of educating me. "We invest where it matters most," he'd say. I always knew what that meant. The funny thing is, no one ever called it favoritism. They called it support. They called it doing what's best. They called it family, and I believed them because believing made the house feel less cruel. Still, I wasn't entirely blind. I had my own small rebellions late nights, drawing in the laundry room studio above the washers, saving scraps of my allowance in envelopes hidden behind detergent bottles, building a quiet world where I didn't have to earn a place at the table. But even then, even with all the clues, a part of me thought things might change someday. That if I worked hard enough, stayed steady enough, quiet enough, I'd be invited into the warmth they reserved for her. It took me a long time to understand that warmth was never meant for me. That was the day I learned my place in this family. It happened quietly, the way erasures always do. A missing name, a shifted glance, a door closing without sound. I was in the office, late, the kind of evening where the city outside feels like a distant hum. Leela's voice carried from the break room, bright, rehearsed, careless. "My sister doesn't have a real career," she said loud enough for laughter to follow. "She just floats around. Adrian only keeps her around out of pity." I didn't step in. I stood behind the half-open conference door, one hand on my laptop bag, breathing through the familiar sting. By the time I walked past them, the conversation had already changed, as if the insult had never existed. But the next morning, the real blow came. My concept file, weeks of work, was gone from the shared folder. In its place was a new version renamed Polished. just enough to look like someone else's idea. Lila's initials sat in the signature line. I stared at the screen longer than I should have. The cursor blinked, patient, indifferent. A soft knock broke the stillness. The intern stepped in shoulders, curled like he was trying to disappear. "I saw her download your file yesterday," he whispered. "She deleted the original." His eyes flicked toward the hallway. I didn't know what to say. I nodded him at the pattern, at the cycle so old it felt like part of my bloodstream. I opened the access logs. There it was. Her username, the timestamp, the deletion, the upload. Clean, intentional. During the afternoon meeting, Lila told the story again. Serenity dropped out of everything when we were younger. She always crumbles under pressure. People chuckled politely. Adrian didn't. His gaze shifted toward me for half a second, like he was reading something in the space I occupied. I kept my hands still on the table, fingers resting on the cold edge. Silence wrapped around me like an old coat, heavy but familiar. I didn't correct her. Holiday lights blinked against the windows of downtown buildings. None of it felt connected to me. I kept walking until the cold burned enough to make everything sharp again. When I finally stopped, I was in the co-working space 2 blocks from our agency. The keypad clicked under my fingers. The lock beeped open. Inside the room was empty, just white light on long tables, the hum of a printer. Someone forgot to turn off, and the faint smell of stale coffee grounds. It was the kind of silence that doesn't comfort but steadies. I placed my laptop on the table and opened the logs. Every timestamp was a small betrayal. Lila downloading my concept, the deletion, her upload, the edits. Then the email she sent Adrian late at night claiming the original direction had flaws and she had fixed it. I didn't react. I just kept scrolling. Access logs don't lie. They don't gossip. They don't twist stories. They only reveal what someone actually touched. I copied everything into a folder I labeled plainly documents. Then I started collecting. Payments, bills, transfers, screenshots of budgets she'd signed without approval, emails where she hinted that I was overwhelmed, not ready, emotionally inconsistent. She had built her own version of me in the system, one that justified taking my work, my credits, my place. It wasn't new. It was simply the first time I had proof. At midnight, my phone buzzed. A text from my aunt, a photo of old paperwork she found while cleaning. Payments my mother had left for me, savings meant for my future, the ones that disappeared when I was a teenager. "Your mother wanted you to have these," she said. I stared at the screen long enough for the blue light to sting my eyes. Then I added the files to the folder. Around 1 in the morning, I walked to the back corner of the space where floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the dark city. Snow had started falling, fine whisper-light flakes drifting under the street lamps. I watched them until my breath slowed, until my pulse steadied. Then I opened a new spreadsheet, a simple one. A list of everything I had built at the agency, clients I brought in, campaigns I directed, projects Lila had claimed. Folders I created, budgets. I balanced hours. I logged it stretched longer than I expected. Most people think revenge feels hot. Mine was cold, methodical. A sequence of small administrative actions typed, saved, filed the next morning before anyone arrived. I went to the old studio above the laundromat on the edge of Aurora, the place where I built my first freelance jobs. The machines downstairs rumbled, shaking the floorboards the way they always did. The air smelled like detergent and warm metal. I slid open the storage drawer. My old drives were still there, wrapped in a scarf from years ago. I plugged them in and waited. Folders bloomed on the screen. Early sketches, concept drafts, original styles that eventually became the agency's signature tone. All mine. All the seeds Lila grew her reputation from. I took what I needed, not out of spite, but because it was mine to take. When I returned to the office, Adrian was in the conference room staring at his laptop like he was trying to outrun a headache. He looked up when I walked in. "Sit," he said softly. I did. He turned the screen toward me. My file, the one Lila claimed. He tapped the corner. "Your metadata is still inside." Of course it was. She changed the name, not the backbone. He opened the access logs next my folder from the night before. "You pulled everything," he said. I nodded. "I didn't push you into this, did I?" "No." And you're sure you want me involved? I thought about it. About silence. About what happens when you speak and no one listens. About what happens when you stay quiet and everyone assumes you'll never stop swallowing what hurts you. Yes, I said. He studied me for a moment. Not with pity, but with the kind of focus people use when assembling something delicate. Then he leaned back. HR needs this. Legal needs this. And the board needs to know where the credit actually belongs. His voice wasn't angry. It was factual, administrative, clean. We spent the next 2 hours assembling the file. Every document, every log, every payment discrepancy, every moment where my work had been fed into Lila's pipeline of praise. Typed, printed, signed. Around noon, he slid the final packet across the table. "I'll handle the process," he said. "You don't have to be the one to deliver this." But part of me wanted to. Not to confront her. Not to explain. Not even to win. I wanted to stop being the silent witness to my own erasure. I picked up the packet. The paper felt heavier than it should have. I rested my hand on it, steady and calm. This time I said I won't fix what they've broken. I arrived late on purpose. Christmas dinner was already in motion when I stepped through the doorway of my father's house. The air was thick with cinnamon roasted meat and the kind of laughter that sounds rehearsed. Lights glowed too warmly against the cold outside. Every year this house tried to convince the world it was a home. I stood near the hallway letting my coat drip moat water onto the tile. They didn't notice me at first. Leela was busy spinning small stories for distant relatives, retelling successes she hadn't earned, leaning into Adrian's shoulder like she owned the room. He wasn't touching her back the way he usually did. His hand hovered a moment, then dropped. When Richard finally spotted me, he gestured to an empty chair at the far end of the table. "Sit. We've been waiting." His tone implied it was my fault for shifting the picture. Diana's eyes flicked over me, coat, shoes, hair, as if checking for flaws. "Try not to make an entrance," she murmured. I didn't answer. I took the seat at the edge, half-shadowed, the way I always had. Dinner resumed, and then inevitably, Lila rose from her chair, pressing a hand to Adrian's arm as if inviting applause. "I want everyone to meet my sister," she said, voice bright. "This," she paused, smiling with practiced sweetness, "is the failure of our family." Richard laughed first. Diana nodded, almost proud of the line. Conversations tapered off into that familiar hush of communal cruelty. The sound was the same one from childhood dinners, the one that told me to stay small, stay quiet, let the moment pass over me. Adrian didn't laugh. He set his fork down with a soft clink. The room stilled around the sound like someone had drawn a curtain across the noise. Christmas music from the kitchen speaker faded into insignificance. He looked at Lila, then at her parents, then slowly at me. "Interesting," he said, voice low and steady, "because you're fired." The sentence landed without force, without theatrics, just truth, placed gently in the center of the table. Lila blinked, confusion flickering across her face. "What we're done," he added, "effective immediately." A few relatives shifted, unsure whether to pretend they hadn't heard. The silence wrapped itself tightly around the room. Adrian reached for his tablet, swiped once, and connected it to the living room TV. The screen brightened, washing the room in cold light. The first file appeared the original concept documents, my name embedded in the metadata, then the access logs, time-stamped, unedited, Leela's username glowing beside every action she thought no one would trace. Download, delete, upload, slide after slide documented what she had taken. Not just the file, but months of work, client strategy design drafts. Her voice shrank as the evidence built itself. "I didn't," she began. He didn't look at her. "You did. When the payments appeared, transfers, she initiated budget approvals. She signed without clearance." Richard sat back in his chair, face tightening the illusion, finally cracking. Diana opened her mouth, then closed it. She had no script for this. Adrian continued calm as ever. "The board received the full report this morning. HR has already processed the termination. And the final note?" He clicked once more. My portfolio appeared. The actual one. The campaigns I built, the projects. I led the clients I brought in. Years of work hidden behind their narrative. Serenity, he said. Eyes on me now. Not asking for permission, simply stating, reality is the co-founder and principal strategist of our agency. She always has been. No applause, no vindication. Just a shift in the air as if the house itself had been holding its breath for years. And finally exhaled. Lila stepped back from the screen like it burned her. You're choosing her over me? Adrian looked at her with the same quiet finality he'd used all night. I'm choosing the truth. No one looked at me directly. They couldn't. The story they built had collapsed in front of them. I sat there, hands folded loosely, heart steady. For the first time, my silence didn't feel like surrender. It felt like authority. Seattle didn't feel like a fresh start right away. At first, it was just distant gray mornings, unfamiliar bus routes, the sound of rain against a window that didn't belong to any version of my past. But distance has its own kind of mercy. It gives the mind room to breathe, to unfurl, to rethink the shape of a life. My new apartment was small, with clean walls and a single plant I kept near the window. The city outside was quieter than Aurora in winter. No rehearsed laughter, no curated family image, no roles I had to play, just the steady rhythm of rain tapping softly like it was checking in. Adrian helped set up the new office, not out of obligation, but because he understood the difference between space built for survival and space built for living. We kept things simple. Wood desk, soft chair, a few pen sketches from campaigns that were actually mine. Work felt different here, lighter. Not because it was easier, but because no one was trying to take it from me. I didn't cut my family off. I just stopped orbiting them. Whatever consequences they faced, audits, questions from relatives, fractured stories they handled without me. Silence can be cruel, but sometimes it's the only language people understand. On Christmas Eve, a year later, I cooked dinner with coworkers who had quietly become friends. We packed extra meals and walked them to a shelter nearby. The air was cold, but the kind that wakes you up, not the kind that freezes you in place. When I sat down at my own small table afterward, I placed the best portion on my plate. Crispy, warm, perfectly chosen. No one told me I didn't deserve it. No one measured my worth against someone else's appetite. The moment was quiet, almost nothing. But it felt like a life finally folding into itself, whole unbent mind. I used to think survival meant staying quiet long enough for someone to finally see me. Now I understand silence differently. It isn't emptiness. It's a door I can choose to open or close, a room no one enters unless I allow it. I stopped asking for a family that only clapped when I failed. And once I stepped away, the noise they made never followed. Wherever this story finds you, may you feel the steadiness of walking toward a life that answers back.